I spent weeks going back and forth trying to decide where in the Canary Islands we should go on our cycling holidays. And now that we are back from 7 days in Tenerife, I want to share what I learned, what surprised me, and what I would do differently. Something I didn't know when we booked or before I went there is that Tenerife, and actually the Canary Islands, along with a lot of other places in the world, is really suffering under the impact of tourism. The island itself is like 1/20th the size of Switzerland, which is already very tiny, and almost 1 million people are living there, not including the massive influx of tourists that come all year round to visit the island because the climate is so stable. Tenerife doesn't really have a proper off-season, so they're always feeling sort of the chaos of people. And this was something I realized when we were cycling through some of the key landmark areas, because the roads were so backed up with rental vehicles, and renting a car is so cheap there. It's like 20-30 bucks a day, so it's the default for everyone. And you can just see that the island, the physical space on the island, doesn't have the capacity for that density of people and that density of cars. And of course, this upsets the locals a lot because they're encountering traffic on their way to work that only exists because of the tourism. And when I first observed this, and when I talked to a few people on Instagram who were locals from that area, I was like, well, tourism brings money into the country, so it is still a positive impact. And they educated me that most people in Tenerife do not profit from the revenue that the tourism brings, right? It's very disproportional. The rich get richer, and the locals don't really actually win a lot from that. And this is really felt especially when it comes to accommodation. So there are people who are owning multiple Airbnbs and really sort of having a monopoly over certain regions. So if I were to go back to Tenerife, there are two things that I would do to sort of minimize my touristic impact. The first would be not renting a car. So plan a good taxi service with a big bus that we can fit all of our bikes in there, and just head to one destination, stay there. Then I would make sure that that destination is sort of a smaller or family-run hotel. When I talked to some locals, they really said, you know, stay away from those all-inclusive chain hotels where the money is just being like siphoned out into these huge corporations. They also said they would love to see sort of a tourist tax being implemented, or paying a national park fee, just to help actually bring more wealth into that region, into the people, and have it stay there, regardless of routes and things you need to see. To me, that's the biggest lesson and the biggest thing I would do differently. So now that that important disclaimer is out of the way, let's talk about the cycling. If you are looking for a training camp where you can just bang out big kilometers every single day, I don't think Tenerife is going to be for you. There's a lot of climbing to do, a lot of beautiful exploring. But on average, in that northern region, our days were sort of more around 80 kilometers and 1,500 to 2,000 meters of elevation. And quite honestly, that was more than enough. If you are heading to Tenerife, be prepared to climb. Be prepared for your legs to be screaming at you most of the time. Our longest day in the saddle was 77 kilometers and 2,400 meters elevation. And I remember, I think we were at like 1,600 meters at 30 or 40 kilometers into the ride. And I was like, I think this is a new record for me. And this ride was sort of the craziest opener we could have done. We headed to Masca, which is that really, really popular spot. Totally beautiful, totally worth it, but be prepared for the rental cars. We did this from Ico de los Viños clockwise, which I would definitely recommend because that descent in Masca was really, really steep. Wouldn't recommend it unless you have really fresh legs and you love steep switchbacks. But gorgeous, worth it. Just be prepared for a lot of traffic. Maybe if I came back to this island with more training under my belt, like at the end of a season, I would attempt to do it the other way around. And also like early in the morning when there's no traffic or something like that, that would be really epic. That would be on my to-do list for sure. And at this point, I want to say we were staying in this place called Ico de los Vinos, and it was like right by the water, which meant it was really, really damp, and our clothes like never dried. We did laundry once and it was wet for like 2.5 days. There was also a lot of fog that would roll in throughout the day. You just felt like the moisture. It almost felt like rain sometimes. And the first 2 days, we started riding kind of in the cloud, and then once we got higher up, we were sort of above the cloud and above the mist, and it would change throughout the day. It would roll in, roll out. But I think generally, if you're looking for blue skies, always super warm, you need to head more south. You're going to get a little bit more variability. But all in all, we never had like a cold day. The evenings would get cold, or sometimes the morning was really fresh, temperatures changing. But throughout the day, cycling, I think 4 out of 7 rides were in short sleeves, like short sleeves up and shorts on the bottom, and like sweating and hot. So if you're in the sun and you're working hard, you're going to be warm. Obviously, pack layers. I always had my sort of frame bag or handlebar bag for extra jackets, for a buff. I love a good buff when you have to descend into the cold. The second day in Icod, we headed to Buena Vista del Norte, which we had passed on the way home the day before, because there's allegedly a really cool lighthouse on sort of the tip of that peninsula. Unfortunately, we got to the road, which looked so epic. It was like going along the coast, through a tunnel, through the cliff, looked really, really cool. And it was closed, under construction. So that is a bucket list that I will actually confirmed come back for, because that road really just goes right along the ocean, and it looked amazing. It was like a recovery ride from the previous day, but it was still 60 kilometers and 1,500 meters elevation, which is kind of the baseline of what you can expect if you head out for a ride in Tenerife. Then we transferred to La Laguna, the Gran Hotel there, which when we arrived, I was like, wow, it's so cool. It's nestled into the heart of La Laguna, which is this UNESCO gorgeous, gorgeous town. The hotel is this amazing rooftop area with a pool and jacuzzi and gym and just some place to lounge. And you're like looking out on top of the city to the mountains around, and it's just gorgeous. The pool was way too cold to go swimming in when we were there, but we could use the jacuzzi, and a friend of mine even used the gym, which was beyond me how she mustered up the strength. And then we also had the half board, so breakfast was fire, and dinner was also quite good. Sometimes because we were so hungry, we had to, like, my friend ordered pizza one day after the dinner, so I think if we would go back again, and if we were in a bigger group, I would try to arrange getting like a second serving of carbs or just extra rice, or, for more normal people, the portions were great. And the dessert was always really fire, but I think for us, we needed a little bit more carbs. And dinner was also always at like 7:30. So we would come home from a ride at 3 or 4 o'clock, and we would be cooked and have to go to like the bakery. The hotel also has a bike room. Shout out to Moloko Cycling, who actually helped us discover this place. They do a lot of rides out there. So the first day we arrived to Laguna, we did sort of a recovery ride, as my friend called it. And that was around 800 meters elevation and 1 hour 40. But you got a taste for riding in the forest on the northern part of the island, like you're traveling back in time. That region is considered a living fossil, and it offers not only this sort of really enchanted forest vibe, but also little peeks out onto the coastline and these amazing massif mountains that give you a feeling of the origins of that island. These massifs were one of the first part of the island to be formed through the volcanic activity. It really, really, really is special. On day 4 or day 2 in La Laguna, we headed along sort of the southeast coast to Guimar. Gorgeous. That was the most cyclists we had seen the entire trip, probably around like 50 people that we passed. Otherwise, throughout the rest of the trip, we would maybe see 5, 10 a day. Really wasn't that many cyclists. Maybe they just couldn't keep up, I don't know. Anyways, up from Guimar, the climb went about 26 kilometers and 1,000, I think 400 meters elevation. It was a long climb. Really beautiful grade. You could really keep rolling nice and steadily. But my legs, and it was hot on that side of the island, and I was just absolutely cooking. There were a lot of motorcycles. Wasn't too bad with cars, but definitely be ready to see a lot of motorcycles there. 98% of them are super kind and respectful. Sometimes you get the one that sort of gives you a jolt and a shock, but all was good. The next day we went back up through the forest, up through that northern region of the island, through Cruz de la Carmen. Also there, we really felt the impact of the tourism with the rental cars, because there was a sort of traffic jam through the forest, through this what feels like middle of nowhere, and they were all waiting to get into this overly filled parking lot that no one could actually get into. So we had to like bob and weave through the last 500 meters or last kilometer of that part of the climb. But then once we were up there past that parking lot, it was a lot more relaxed. And again, just beautiful views of the coastline, a really just special feeling being up there. And from this sort of top, you have the opportunity, if you have the legs for it, to head down and drop into like endless little dead ends that you can explore. A friend of mine went to one, which was also a designated sort of cycling route. But she really suffered on the way back. I think she said it was like 12% or 13%, but there you were able to get down to the coast. So if your dream is to head to a little beach, dip your toes in the ocean on the northern part of the island, there are a few options for you to do that there. Then we created a little loop, headed to San Andreas, through Santa Cruz. This part was not as fun. I was already really, really tired, and Santa Cruz is like an uphill city that's very stop and go, stop and go. You have like these rows of lights. On the last day, we did the same route, but in the other direction, and we found a way to avoid some of this with a little bit of an extra climb. So if you're looking to avoid a lot of traffic in cities, check out that last route. On the second last day, we did a hike. We took the bus from La Laguna to Cruz de la Carmen and did this like 8-kilometer loop, which I really, really also appreciated, to just spend a little bit more time in that region. Sometimes when you're cycling, you're so focused on go, go, go. It's nice to sit and have a snack somewhere, or like, you know, touch some rocks or be more surrounded by the trees. So I really would recommend doing that as well. There's endless hiking opportunities on this island, and I think you could also spend a week or 2 weeks just walking through it. Now, the last day we wanted to have as a queen stage. I wanted to go up to the volcano, to Teide. You can ride up to around 2,000, I think 400 or 500 meters elevation. And we would have done a loop down to Puerto Cruz and back to La Laguna. But after the previous long climb, that 26K climb, I just didn't really feel like suffering that much. I just wanted to enjoy myself and soak up the views here without really having to dig that deep. So we ended up reversing the route of the day before. And I was so glad we did, because when you head the other direction on a route, you see things you would have never seen while you're descending that region. And we also had a completely different climate. We had much clearer skies. There was some sort of dust that was pushed in the 2 days before. So it was a little bit almost like foggy or sandy, the air. And then the last day, it really cleared up. We had a few clouds, but it was just gorgeous, and it looked completely different. So I think you could quite easily spend a lot of time in La Laguna, like rewriting some of these routes, dropping in and doing dead ends, going up to Teide. So there's a lot of options, but as I said at the beginning of this video, they're just not massive Ks. Unless you want to go and tackle all of them and you have the legs to do that and all the meters of elevation. Or unless you want to do a little bit more main road cycling and ride around the island, or focus more on just going up and over Teide on either side, I think you could do that too. But because we like to stay a little bit more away from the main roads, you're a little bit more restricted in how many kilometers you can accumulate that way. So all in all, my highlights of the trip: one, just exploring a beautiful place. Feels like you're being transported back into time, seeing new species, different animals, trying new foods, getting some churros. The bakeries, insane. The bakeries are insane. Go for just the bakeries, okay? Number two, the drivers, for the most part, super respectful. The first few days, I was like shocked how many cars moved over completely into the other lane to pass us. We had a few, maybe just like a tiny handful of times where I felt, oh, that was a little bit closer than I would have liked. But for 6-7 days of cycling all day, it was one of the safer experiences I've felt in traffic. Excluding maybe those like really dense touristic areas where felt like the tourists in the rental cars didn't feel confident. That was a little bit sketch, but otherwise the people were so nice. The food was amazing, and I just really love that landscape. And you get to see the ocean, you feel the ocean, and you smell the saltiness of it. And then at the same time, you are in this forest and you are in between these lava rocks. And you can also go hiking. La Laguna was gorgeous. I love staying there, would 100% stay there again. So if I went back to Tenerife, which I hope to do because there's still a few things I want to check off my list, including that lighthouse and still riding my tired butt up to Tahiti, I would head in, I would take a taxi, and I would stay somewhere at a family run or a small scale hotel in La Laguna, go and visit the bike shop in La Laguna. You can also rent some bikes there. They have sort of a small fleet, the Cumbre. My friend, obviously her brake pads were done after the first few days. So they were really quick to help with that. I think it is a really cool place and you will absolutely love it. Get creative, get exploring, and have fun and be safe. Hope this has been helpful. We'll see you on the road.